Welcome, viewers and listeners, to our penultimate episode of Season 7. We've got one more to go. This is our last kind of episode proper, and then tune in for our next episode, which will be our top 10 favorite 80s films.
Indeed.
Which I think will be really interesting because you grew up watching horror films in the 80s. I barely watched any horror movies in the 80s, so I'm guessing our list will be very different, but we can talk about that next episode.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting because I'm not sure what's going to stand up in my mind, because something I might have thought that was good when I was 15 might not stand up anymore.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, like the role nostalgia plays in those older films. So yeah, should be good. All right, but first we are going to do our quick cuts. And like our last episode, we're doing a special quick cut segment because we went to see another film together in theaters. And this is Bring Her Back by the Filippo brothers. So synopsis is two grieving teenage step-siblings, 17-year-old Andy and his visually impaired sister Piper, also placed with a foster mother named Laura. But Laura's care hides a dark purpose, which I won't spoil here. So what begins as an eerie domestic drama spirals into a brutal, supernatural, psychological horror marked by intense violence, shocking ritualistic imagery, and harrowing emotional breakdown.
We're going to put you with a foster mum called Laura. You're going to love her.
Oh, welcome to your new home. This is my daughter's room. I want to show you something else. This way.
We stuffed one.
I know I'm a weirdo.
How did you cope with Kathy being gone?
I didn't.
This has a 7.6 on Internet Movie Database, an 89% critic score, and a slightly less 79% audience score. So I think when you and I left the theater, we were big fans of Talk to Me. We both, I think, really enjoyed this film, or at least thought it was good. And we both noted that it was evocative of Hereditary in terms of tone.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're not familiar, if you didn't see Talk to Me, I'd recommend you go watch it. Two brothers, that was their first feature film, I believe. Talk to Me, the Filippo brothers.
Yes.
So same directors, the two brothers, and I think they have writing credits on this one too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a ride, that's for sure. And there's some like gruesome body horror, and there's a few different things. It's different than Talk to Me, but it's still a good film, and it's still firmly in the horror genre for sure.
Yeah, Talk to Me, though, was pretty dark. Yeah. Had a sense of fun at times.
Yeah.
This one is a lot darker.
Ooh, yeah.
And if we talk about Hereditary being kind of like grief or sorrow kind of horror, I would say it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And it's not, and there's some pretty intense gore scenes as well, in a shocking way. Yeah. Kind of like some key scenes from Talk to Me, if you've seen it and you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, really good performances, gorgeous cinematography.
Yeah.
And I think these guys, because they were comedians and they've come into the horror, like they bring their own sense of style. Their films feel unique.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that they started as comedians. Or
apparently.
Comedy. Oh, interesting.
Kind of like Jordan Peele. Like I think just having these outside forces coming into horror bring just something, like their films feel like they have a distinct flavor to them. And they're really enjoyable, but they're really proficient at technical filmmaking, I think.
Yeah, for new-ish filmmakers, it's pretty impressive what they're able to come up with. And I had a thought when you're talking about, because we've talked about this many times, there's a fine line between horror and comedy. And that's what's really interesting about Jordan Peele and these two brothers. If they have that comedy background, I think there's a lot of things like delivery, timing, those kinds of things that are very important in both genres.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that someone who may have been adept at comedy is also adept at horror, just because they're so adjacent.
They kind of know the opposite. Yeah, totally. So this may not be for everybody. It is really, like, this will ruin your day. It is dark, dark. Yeah. So, and depending on the themes, like, I think there's a lot of stuff involving children in this one. Yeah. So if you're sensitive to that, that might be something to consider because they don't pull their punches.
No.
So, but it's very good. Like if you like horror like Hereditary, then I think you will enjoy Bring Her Back.
Yeah, I agree.
But this is not a full episode on Bring Her Back.
No, maybe next season though. Maybe.
That's right.
We'll have to see.
All right, so moving on. So I think we were both recommending
Absolutely.
bring her
Thumbs up.
back. Yeah. So that's 2 for 2 for the Philippo brothers, and I'm really excited to see what they do next. Which actually, on a side note, I thought they were doing some kind of sequel to Talk to Me as their next film.
Okay.
So I was kind of pleasantly surprised, I guess, to see them do something.
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't want to see a Talk to Me sequel, but
Yeah, I was interested. I would be interested to see that as well. I didn't hear anything. I think we both deliberately didn't read anything, didn't watch any trailers, didn't do anything before we went into that. Yeah. So I went in totally cold. I knew nothing about the film other than bring her back. So you can kind of play with that idea.
Yeah. And this could be coincidence, but I'm going to just say it now so it's on record in case I'm right. There was a scene in Bring Her Back where one of the characters says, "Talk to me." Did you catch that?
Oh, I do remember that now. Yeah,
I'm thinking like, oh, so I wonder if their next film, they'll have a character say, "Bring her back." Like, I wonder if they'll weave in the titles of their thing into dialogue in future films.
That's
so
cool.
I just thought it was probably not unintentional that a character said, "Talk to me."
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, especially if they're writing.
Yeah, in a different context.
Yeah,
so.
that's a good catch. Actually, I didn't. I remember what the line, but I didn't pick up on it at the time.
Yeah, I kind of smiled to myself, like, "Oh, okay, I see what you did there." All right. Anyways, for today's film, we are going back to the 1980s, 1988, to tackle Child's Play. So, a synopsis for Child's Play. In this classic slasher horror film, single mother Karen Barkley gives her son Andy a good guy doll for his birthday, unaware that it's been possessed by the soul of notorious serial killer Charles Lee Ray, aka Chucky. As people start turning up dead, Andy tries to warn everyone that Chucky is alive, but no one believes him until it's far too late. The film blends supernatural horror with slasher tropes and sparked a franchise that continues to this day.
Everyone has a birthday they'll always remember.
Can we open my presents now, Mommy? A good guy! I knew it! Hi, I'm Chucky.
He's something, isn't he?
This is Andy's.
Time for bed, Andy.
Good night, baby. Good night, Aunt Maggie. Good night, Chucky.
Directed by Tom Holland, who directed Fright Night, starring Catherine Hicks as Karen Barkley, Chris Sarandon, as Detective Mike Norris, who you might recognize from Fright Night as well, or Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride.
That's right.
It's like, oh yeah, that's where he's from. Alex Vincent, no relation, as Andy Barkley, and of course Brad Dourif as Charles Lee Ray and the voice of Chucky. Yeah. So this one has a 6.6 on Internet Movie Database with a 71% critic score and a slightly lower 63% audience score. So here's where I want to start. I found a quote from Roger Ebert saying, "The film is technically impressive, but ultimately too silly to be truly scary." Do you agree with Roger Ebert? Sorry,
whoever said that.
Yeah. Only the most famous film critic of all time.
That's an interesting perspective. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'm going to say I do agree with him. However, there are elements of Chucky that are quite scary.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think as an umbrella statement about the film as a whole, I can see where he's coming from. But I made note of it, but there are some really interesting, like the contortions of his face and the anger of the doll. It's pretty visceral. Like, it's pretty scary.
And that kind of like scampering motion they capture a few times is a little bit like, ooh, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I think I've talked to a few people, though, who do find, just like some people are like really scared of clowns. Yeah. I've heard some people say they're quite scared of like the idea of like a reanimated doll.
Yeah.
For me personally, I don't really find that scary. So I would say I didn't find Chucky scary. But I think if you were sensitive to that idea, just like if you were scared of clowns, then for that crowd, they might find it actually pretty creepy.
Yeah, I mean, and I can see that. I'm not particularly scared. I find often the doll films are pretty silly.
Yeah.
However, I was going somewhere with that thought. I was going to say it's just like, Annabelle had moments. Megan was not a doll. I found that manifestation, the AI kind of robot-y, was very scary.
Do you find the AI version more scary, or the idea of a possessed doll more scary?
No, AI for sure.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I just find it, I guess, why I agree with Ebert is the stature is so small and they're made out of, it's like I can punt you through the window.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just don't, like I said, there are elements of this that I found scary even on rewatch. But as a whole, yeah, I get the silliness of the doll thing for sure.
Okay, and then another take, like, what is your history with the Child's Play franchise?
So, very interesting. I don't know if I saw this upon release, and it was a long time before I saw it, partly because it's like a doll film. Like, how scary can a doll be? That was certainly
So you were turned off of it because just the idea of a doll.
Yeah.
Yeah, which just speaks to Ebert's point a little bit, I suppose.
But then I saw the remake first.
The 2019.
Oh,
interesting.
So the reboot, whatever you want to call it. And I think that had Mark Hamill as the voice.
Yeah.
I found that to be edgier, grittier, scarier than the original. And then I kind of went back and I've seen a couple. I think I've only seen the original and 2, but I know that there's 3, Bride of, Seed of, Curse of, Cult of. I haven't seen any of those, but I do want to go back. I do have in my head that I want to see the Meg Tilly. No, it's not Meg Tilly. That's her sister. You're looking at me blankly.
Yeah.
Okay. So in one of the films, and I don't know which one because I haven't seen them, Chucky does come back again, but he takes a bride.
Oh, I have seen Bride of Chucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she's whichever Tilly. I wish I could remember Jennifer Tilly.
Okay, that's where I was drawing the blank. I can't remember the name. But.
Jennifer Tilly. I mean, she's pretty much made a career out of Chucky films, and I've seen her interviewed. She really likes these films, and she likes that character. Like, I don't think you often get a chance to be that nasty.
No,
and I think that's appealing for some actors. It's like I'll never get to do this kind of role again.
And I was glad you'd warned me because I was like, oh, maybe I'll watch this with Emily, Evil Emily, who was on earlier.
Yeah,
because I hadn't seen this one, so I thought,
oh, okay.
So I didn't realize quite how vulgar he is.
So you've seen, like, you saw a Bride or whatever, but
so the funny thing for me is, because I was not allowed. I grew up in like a pretty religious household. I was not allowed to watch these films. So as a kid, like, that was a no-go. But in recent years, I unfortunately have seen like Seed of Chucky, Bride of Chucky, maybe Curse of Chucky. So I've seen the later ones.
Yeah,
and they're fine. They're kind of just silly.
Yeah.
You don't take them very seriously. Yeah. But I mean, they're pretty graphic in some ways, but I didn't know how much they jived with the original version. So anyways, having watched this, I do want to go and watch them all now. I think Chucky's like maybe one of the better 80s franchise. Yeah.
I mean, I think I would say better it would be Freddy Krueger in terms of a franchise.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Of the original.
Oh, sorry. For the original.
Yeah. Yes. Not the franchise because they get really stupid later.
Yeah. That's an important qualifier. Yeah. So anyways, I'm glad I did not watch this with my child.
Yes. I'm glad you didn't either.
Brad Dourif has quite the mouth on him.
He does. But so coming back to this idea of scary or not, I found the opening sequence pretty gripping, pretty good. Like with Brad Dourif when he was still alive.
Right.
I mean, there are bits of that are kind of cheesy, but I kind of, again, this is one of those concept films that I liked the concept of, okay, you've got this notorious serial killer who, and it's not voodoo, but it's something like that.
I think it is it's like black magic.
Yeah. And he transfers his soul into this doll.
Because he uses a voodoo doll at one point.
He does, yeah. I just saw that there were other things around, so I thought maybe it wasn't voodoo, but it's definitely in that realm of something. So yeah, I just kind of liked, I mean, it's kind of goofy with the cop chasing him, and it's like, you can't, anyway, I won't spoil anything more than that. But yeah, I kind of like the opening sequence, and
see, I was the opposite of you, where I found the opening sequence kind of over the top and cheesy.
Fair.
And when I looked at that character, I didn't buy that he would just be able to bust out some random like voodoo ritual. He didn't seem like that type of character. And then later in the film, when they also dabble with this part, it seems a bit over the top. It pulled me back in as the film went on, and maybe it made more sense in the context of the overall film. But my original impression was it just seemed a bit over the top to me.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it, but I see that. I see there are many elements of this that go over the top, I think.
So was this your first time watching the original then, or you'd seen the original years before?
No, I'd seen the original before, but I saw the reboot first and then went back and saw the original. And like I said, I quite like the reboot, the remake. I think it's worthy of the original and maybe is a little edgier for a modern audience.
Right.
The remake.
Did you catch, do you know where they got the name for, was it Charles Lee Ray from? You could maybe guess, but
it's not Ray Charles, is that?
No, so it's Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and James Earl Ray. Okay. So they mixed together 3 serial killers to make Charles Lee Ray. I'm curious. So one thing I'm kind of mixed on. What did you think of Alex Vincent as Andy Barclay, the kid?
I did not like his performance.
Chucky, like the way he talked was so staccatoed almost or slow. I actually found that kind of detracted for me. I found him, just the way he talked, to be, I don't know, like frustrating
and
or hard to listen to.
I'm not an actor. Don't pretend to know. And I'm not.
And he's a kid, right? So we don't want to beat up on the child actor.
Not pooping on a child actor, but I found that I wasn't that thrilled with his performance. But to be fair, I wasn't that crazy about the mother's performance either.
Yeah, that's fair too. I just find in horror though, it's amazing how many amazing child actors there are.
Absolutely.
So I find often the case they actually do manage to find kids who are really good.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where the kid is quite upset later in the film, and I thought actually he does a good job of like emoting in a realistic way.
I think it gets better as he becomes more in danger as the film goes on. I think his performance gets better.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I found the way he talked just to be really distracting. It kind of took something away, but I don't know if that bothered you as well, or.
I didn't really pick up. I mean, I was looking at the performance rather than, the vocals or whatever, but like the speech. But I totally hear what you're saying.
And are you a Chris Sarandon fan, or?
I am actually in this role. I mean, I keep coming back to this word cheesy because a lot of the film is cheese. I mean, I don't want to spoil. I have some thoughts about that, and I'll mention it in the spoilers. But yeah, I mean, I like Chris Sarandon as an actor. I thought he was really good in Fright Night. Mm-hmm. Of course, he's great as Humperdinck in
Princess Bride.
But yeah, I liked him, but I found that the writing of his character and some of the situations they get him into are like, I didn't buy it.
Yeah. Brad Dourif, I think, steals the show in terms of performance. I mean, as a voice actor for Chucky, he's great. And I think Brad Dourif's always great. We saw, The Exorcist.
Yeah, Legion.
Yeah.
Exorcist 3.
Yeah.
He's really good in that. Just like riveting when his scenes come up.
Yeah.
And almost everything I've ever seen him in has been like, he wasn't always a scene stealer, but he's a very solid character actor who I think really portrays whatever's written on the page. He's just a really solid actor. And
Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, he's always good. Yeah, he does a good job. Yeah. So I think he was the best performance. Chris Sarandon maybe second.
Yeah,
I agree. The mother maybe not great, and the kid just kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I agree.
Music?
Again, with same as the last one, I didn't really love or hate. It was just forgettable for me. It was just passed me by.
Yeah, I kind of wrote down like standard 80s fare. It did what it needed to do, but didn't really stand out as like an amazing score or
exactly.
anything.
Yeah.
I actually really like the aesthetics of the building. I love that metal gate style elevator that they had.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah.
And like the hallway and the stairs, like they used that scene a few times, that setting, sorry. And I quite I noted that I liked that style of elevator. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I've never seen one in real life. I mean, I've been to New York, but probably not, I don't even know if it was set in New York, but I know a lot of old, brownstone buildings and stuff would have had elevators like that. Mm. It's a very cool vibe. I would love to live in a building like that.
Yeah. So it might be hard to talk about some things with this film without spoilers.
I do think we have to jump in pretty quick because there's just so much. I mean, the general premise, you're not spoiling anything, but to get specific, I think we have to jump into spoilers pretty quick.
Yeah. Is there anything non-spoiler that you want to talk about?
Let's just have a quick look. I don't think so. Talked about I have in my notes, Andy, meh. So I obviously wasn't that impressed with it. So did you you mentioned a couple that you'd seen. Which ones of the franchise do you know? Like, did you go back and like take stock?
No.
Okay.
So for sure, I've seen Seed of Chucky because there's a certain scene in that
Yes.
one that.
No, I know the scene you're talking about.
I'm not going to say it here, but it sticks with you. So I've seen that one. I think I've seen Bride of Chucky as well. So my introduction to the Child's Play franchises, I think some of the campier ones.
Yeah.
I saw the 2019 remake.
Yeah.
But I saw that years ago. I remember liking it and thinking it was good. And the AI, I thought was like a really smart twist on the concept of Chucky. But I had not seen the originals, and the remake I haven't seen, I don't think, since 2019.
Yeah, I saw it when it first came out, and I haven't seen it since.
We work at the same place. This is like a very busy time of year, so I wanted to go back and watch that as well. I actually thought that would have been a fun like original versus remake episode to do, and maybe we can do that in the future. But I remember liking it.
Yeah.
But this was my first, maybe when I was, no, I can remember. I think this was my first interaction with the first Child's Play, which is kind of crazy, really. But as I've said, like the 80s has been a big blind spot for me.
I think knowing what I know of the films in the franchise that I haven't seen, I think they'll be fun ones to go watch because they're kind of cheesy, campy, and some of the things are so over the top that it's almost comedy.
Yeah.
So I think I might enjoy as opposed to Halloween, which is or not Halloween, Friday the 13th when we watched all 11 films or whatever. It was just like, oh.
What did you think of the second Child's Play?
You know what? I know I've seen it, but it's really forgettable for me. Like I don't remember much about the second one, or I conflate it with the first one and I can't remember.
As a pattern in most of these franchises, I find usually the second film is usually quite strong, and then usually it's the third and fourth where it really starts to go downhill.
Yeah.
And I think we've noted that a few times. So yeah, I'll be curious to see. I do want to go watch, second, third. I don't know if I need to go rewatch Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, but 2 and 3, I would like to see.
Because there's that scene.
There is that scene, indeed.
So we're going to go into spoilers?
Maybe we should, because I think a lot of stuff we need to talk about maybe would involve spoilers, and we don't want to ruin it for you if you're like us and hadn't seen this until now.
So we're going to go into spoilers. So before we go into spoilers, though, we always say, like, do you recommend this or not?
Yeah, I actually do recommend Child's Play. It's a fun romp. Yeah. It's not terrifying, but I think
I agree. It's a fun one, and the other thing too is I think we've said this many times before. If you're a horror fan, I think you don't always have to see the whole franchise, but I think it's worth seeing the original of whatever franchise you're talking about, like whether it's Nightmare or Halloween or Friday the 13th, whatever. I think it's worth going back and watching, the original. Because then you have a concept of either you like it or you don't, but at least you understand where it fits into the, sort of horror background.
And Chucky is like a horror icon, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like, if we're going to do Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers and Jason, it's like you kind of got to do Chucky as well. And obviously seeing where it all started seems like the most logical place to go.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's a double recommend then for Child's Play.
For sure.
Okay, so if you have not seen it, go watch it. And now we're going to get into some more
You've been warned.
Details.
Spoilers. Okay.
So I just had an upcoming thing spoiled for me.
Okay.
So
the first scene, to go back, when he's like putting his hand on the doll, there's a giant thunderstorm. I found that like just a little bit too over the top.
I see that, yeah.
I was hoping for something a little more like dark and subdued, but it's different, I guess.
I would suggest that another way to frame that would be, it really does set you up for the rest of the film, though, in terms of tone, and kind of the cheesy over the topness.
That's fair. Yeah,
it kind of lets you know, okay, this is what's coming.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah, so but I understand. Yeah, it's especially because I think if I'm remembering, it's like one of those storms where like all the clouds come over one building kind of thing. Like he's drawing on power from the universe sort of thing.
And like when you look at Brad Dourif, would you think that he was a person who could pull off like some black magic ritual like out of his pocket when he had to, or?
I don't know.
He's like doing the language. Just like, really? I don't know.
Yeah, that the incantations or whatever he was doing were like, really? Like you must have studied quite a bit to get that.
Yeah,
all this like at your beck and call when you need it.
And maybe we're overthinking that. And then there's the part where they go to his apartment.
Yes.
And there's like all this ritualistic art on the wall. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit over the top.
Yeah. It's a little on the nose for sure.
Yeah. So those elements kind of turned me off. But what didn't turn me off which I guess would have turned me on, but we won't go there. I really love how they split like Chucky's persona or the source of fear into half. So the first half of the film, you only hear what he's saying through the eyes of Andy. Or so he is saying, oh, like he said he wants to watch the 5 o'clock news. And he said, what did he say? That she was that bitch deserved to die anyways or something. And it's kind of unsettling and creepy when he's saying it.
Yes.
Because you don't know, is this kid crazy? I mean, we know the doll's possessed, but I like how the doll doesn't actually say any of these things.
Yeah.
And then the reveal
is just
the best scene in this movie where she opens the little battery compartment and the batteries aren't there. And then he turns on her and calls her like all these horrible names.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, that was amazing.
Yeah, I thought so too. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but they took their time.
Yes.
They could have revealed that a lot earlier,
Yeah.
but they actually wait until like halfway through the film or like quite late into the film to have that transformation. And I thought that was super effective.
Me too. I agree with you 100%. Like I found it quite creepy when she opens the battery compartment and there's no batteries.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now she knows what her son knows. And then, Chucky's tirade is just awesome. But it's so filthy. It's just brutal.
And that caught me off guard maybe a little bit, how, his language.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that, so it didn't catch me off guard, but it was really fun to watch it again because it's horrible. It's just like he just
and then
goes
he bites her. And,
yeah.
So I thought the way they executed that was brilliant, and that for half the film, you only know about what Chucky might be doing. I mean, it's hinted at, but never really explicitly shown. And then they just have this like instant transformation when the audience and when the mother realizes that he's been doing this with no battery power, so he has to be possessed. Because she's very skeptical.
Yes, as you would be. Like if my kid said to me, "Okay, well my doll is telling me things," it's like, okay, well that's just a kid thing. You have an imaginary friend, your doll's talking to you, whatever. But then when these strange things start happening, I think your first instinct would be like, "Oh man, is my child? Is something wrong with my child?" Like. Because of course you don't jump first to, oh, it must be the possessed doll that we bought in the alley from some rub-a-dub.
And when Chucky hits the floor and like scampers under the couch, like that kind of scampering motion that they get for him a few times, I think is really good.
What did you think about the first kill with Maggie, her friend?
It was fine. I think I liked the tension leading up to it more.
Yeah,
where you see the footprints and you see him scampering and she's looking around, but she doesn't really know what's up. They intentionally, I guess, don't show. They just show her, right? And then she gets hit, but they never show him doing it. And she falls out. And she falls out the window. It's fine. I don't know. What did you think?
I agree with you about the tension leading up to it. I guess I just found it pretty cheesy. Sorry to keep using that word, but that she kind of stumbles backwards and then falls out the window and like the glass explodes outward. It's like you'd have to be like running full tilt to get that kind of explosion of glass. So I found that a little bit like, okay.
Oh no, sorry.
I was just going to say I would have rather seen like Chucky do something maybe a little sneakier. As opposed to, I mean, he was sneaking around, but you saw the footprints and stuff. I don't know, like not necessarily a graphic scene to start with, but maybe he puts something in her drink or, he does, I don't know, something different. It didn't really appeal to me. I like the tension first, though.
No, that's a great point, and I agree. Because they need to set it up so that she dies in a way that looks like it's an accident.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Like if she was like stabbed to death 100 times, that wouldn't work, right? With what they're trying to do, being like, who did this?
True. Yeah.
Because obviously they want to build it up, at least in the minds of the adults, that it could have been the kid.
Yes. Because if it was something graphic, they would have a lot of physical evidence that they could test, right?
Right. So having her fall out the window is like, okay, well, that could have been an accident, or we don't know exactly how that happened. But I agree, though, the way that is executed with like the shot of her, you see this little hammer hit her, and then she like stumbles back for a while. And they I like though that the cops are kind of laughing when they're looking at the murder weapon. It's like this little like toy hammer that's so small. And you're like, oh, like it does those kind of clever things. But I think because they really needed to have that kill achieve certain parameters, that maybe they could have been more creative with it.
I thought what did work for me is her landing. I thought that was pretty good. Like that was believable. I didn't believe it when she fell out the window, but I believed it when she hit the car. I was like, oh, okay, that was pretty good. Like they ended that well.
Yeah, sorry, because like the force you would need to like smash through a window, like
exactly.
if she got hit in the face and she would just bump against the wall.
Totally.
That'd be the end of it.
Or, knock over the plants, hit her head, something. But it's unlikely that you would, fall out the window.
So do you think they're trying to almost get a laugh out of the audience? Is that intentional, almost satire, or?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I didn't see this as a comedy horror.
No.
But, the reviews I watched or read and things, they often pair that together. It's a comedy horror. I didn't really see the comedy. So yes, it's possible that those scenes were meant to be somewhat comedic, or so over the top that they become funny.
Yeah.
Right.
There was one line where like they talk about how ugly the doll is, and she's like, "Fuck you, bitch!" Or like I laughed out loud at that part. Like there's just. Yeah. So we're trying to swear on this podcast, so it's awkward when you're trying to quote.
Now I have to put explicit warnings on.
I know. But like those kind of one-liners were kind of funny a couple of times.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it does come off as comedic despite the fact that he's so filthy. Just that language coming from this, 18-inch doll or whatever.
Yeah.
That does have a comedic effect.
But it's not horror comedy.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think it lands solidly. I mean, it is a horror film for sure, just because of the tropes and the things that happen, but it's not scary, really.
No, I didn't find it scary. Unless, again, maybe with that qualifier that if you're terrified of the idea of like a reanimated doll, that would be scary. But.
I mean, there were, like, I found when his face was melted, that was pretty creepy. Like how Chucky looked there.
What did you think of the aesthetics of Chucky and the animatronics, or how they did his face? Like, did you like the look of Chucky? Do you feel like that holds up in 2025?
Not so much, but I did like I said, I think his grimacing and his anger face, I think those were actually kind of creepy.
Yeah, I agree.
And scary. It's kind of like, you know how you see sometimes like 19th century dolls or whatever, and they're just at some point in history they were meant to be a little girl or boy's plaything, but they're creepy as hell when you look at them in a modern context. So yeah, I think given the time frame and what they were dealing with, like we've talked about a few of the 80s films having like a rubbery look. When they're trying to do practicals, I didn't see that same rubbery look in his face.
Yeah.
So I quite liked some of the things they did with his face, because I do think the anger came across and the bitterness of, because it still has the consciousness of Charles Lee Ray.
Yeah.
And he's super bitter and angry about being in this doll, and he's looking for a way out. The one thing that really, not about Chucky, but the one thing that really niggled me, and I know it's sort of a plot device to move the movie forward, there is no way that a mother would be tailing a cop and going to a crime scene and was the first one in the door.
100%.
It's like, A, you would never be there in real life. B, if you were there, which you never would be, but if you were there, the cop's not going to let you go first through the door. Who knows what's on the other side?
I did have that same thought, yeah.
And then the other thing, in that same scene, they find the voodoo purveyor, black magic doctor, whatever, witch doctor. He's got a broken arm and a broken leg or whatever. Now, I don't know about you, but if I came across that scene, I would be horrified. I don't even know if I could talk looking at that guy. She just wanders over and starts asking him questions. Yeah. And it's like, come on.
Well, and when she goes to like the worst part of town to confront that guy, and there's like, street people there, but like kind of dangerous looking street people. And you're just like, I don't know, a young woman by yourself going there. I didn't really buy that either.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see doing that if you thought your child was there and they were trying to rescue your kid. Like, sure, I could see that. But to go like confront a guy who sold you a doll. Yeah, some of those things that kind of stretch the
credulity. Yeah, I mean, and just the idea that it looks like they're living in a big city. What are the chances that you're going to find the guy that sold you the doll in a downtown kind of Lower East Side sort of thing? So yeah, those were.
The film does have a lot of those things where if you overthink it, if you're happy to just go along with the movie and not think twice about it.
Yes, I agree. And I think, again, this isn't a Hereditary. So That's not where you're going to come into this film looking for, great dialogue and thoughtful ideas and it's just a fun romp with a possessed doll.
Yeah. So if we dial this down to the darkest it could be, you probably end up with something like an Annabelle.
Yes.
Where you're taking this idea of a possessed doll, but it's super creepy and like it's scary. Like I think Annabelle, maybe not the movie, but the idea of Annabelle, how she's represented in the Conjuring films, I prefer that darker tone. And then if you were to turn it the other direction, you probably end up with looks like the Megan 2.
Right.
Which the new version, which actually isn't out yet, but just looks almost straight comedy.
Yeah.
Because the first Megan is kind of funny, but she's still, I think, as you said, still pretty unsettling, kind of creepy.
Yeah, I think
that movie tonally maybe more fits with this.
Yes, for sure. Because I was going to say, I found Annabelle creepier in the Conjuring films than in her own films.
Agreed.
So yeah, and it was kind of like that dark atmosphere around a doll, and there's in Annabelle's case there's a history of possession and events that have happened that kind of creep you out when you think about it. This one is hard to get creeped out thinking about. It's like, oh, so there's this happens and this happens, but it is fun, right? It's a fun popcorn Friday night movie,
and is a product of the 1980s because I think that's the trend we've seen all season, right? That right now in horror, it seems like the thing to do oftentimes is to find like just the darkest take on something that you can do. So yeah, like the Conjuring films or Hereditary or Midsummer or Talk to Me, or, they're all very dark. But most of these 1980s films walk this strange kind of genre bending line where it's kind of campy, kind of funny, kind of dark and scary still, but not just complete dread.
No, and it's interesting because it actually is really cool to watch a group of films from a decade or an era and kind of see, oh, okay. It's kind of like, in the 50s with Large Bugs and you had this atomic fear. I'm not sure how to explain the 80s thing, but you're right. Like there's so many of them are sort of horror comedy or campy or whatever. And very few of them, I can't even think of one that goes as dark as a modern horror. I mean, maybe it's one that I haven't seen, but.
Like we didn't tackle it this season, but maybe The Shining would be.
Yeah. Okay, that might be one. Yeah.
Like if I'm to think of like a really dark 80s film in the horror genre, I guess I would think of something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Videodrome that we did there wasn't a lot of humor there either.
But it's not dread.
No, you're right. It's not as dark as what we're seeing in the last few years.
Yeah, like they've really tried to go as dark as they can the last couple of years, which I've really liked, but you just didn't see that at this decade.
And it's if you had asked me, I would say, oh yeah, for sure there were some, really scary movies in the 80s, but not the ones we chose. Like I don't think there's one terrifying film. I think 70s had some terrifying. And it's really weird. It's almost like that pendulum theory of social history where it goes, conservative and then liberal, and it kind of goes back and forth. It seems that decades of film seem to be doing the same thing. And I wonder, in the 1970s, there was a lot of turmoil in terms of, women's rights, political stuff. You had Vietnam in the early 70s. So I wonder if that had a role to play in some of those darker, scarier films, whereas in the 80s, you are in a conservative era. So I wonder if that was a response to that conservative era, was to make it a little lighter, a little campier, a little bit comedy tinged.
Yeah, and it does, I think, swing dark again in the 90s, but the 90s, as we mentioned in previous episodes, was very much obsessed with like the procedural.
Yeah.
So you get like Seven, which is super dark.
Yeah.
But it's kind of in that murder mystery lane more than like a straight horror lane. And I don't think people typically think of the 90s as like a great decade for horror, but.
You know what I've noticed though, because I have watched quite a few 90s films in the last couple of years, there's a lot of, there seems to be kind of like in the 60s, I think, like a fear of young people. There's a lot of teenage horror films. And, I know you did last summer, The Faculty.
Totally, that's true.
Cherry Falls, I think, was one. Yeah, there's a whole bunch that just have like a group of teenagers fighting against something. I think there was just a really interesting time where maybe adults weren't understanding. I think 90s was a real transition period. The 80s, I wouldn't have guessed it, but you're absolutely right. I don't know, like you said, The Shining, there's probably some other ones, but really not very many dark, scary films.
Yeah, it's just an interesting blend of tone, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mentioned, I had a note to myself that Chucky is crispy at the end.
Yes, he is.
I found that to be very disturbing, that sort of half melted and burned hair, and just that kind of wigged me out a little bit. I found that Chucky way more scary than earlier versions in the film.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, he's like, just looks horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the melted plastic and
and
charred hair, burnt clothes.
I was trying to think, because I did watch this maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something, so it's not super fresh. They obviously leave it open at the end, but I was just trying to remember how they did that. Does he walk away? Like, what happens?
Well, so they think he's dead and he comes back and attacks, right? And they shoot him through the heart.
Right.
And I think that's sort of the end of it. I'm trying to remember. They don't tease that he lived, did they?
Well, okay.
I'm trying to remember the last scene.
Yes, I am. I am remembering the last scene now. It's because they were in the bedroom and the cop got, stabbed or whatever by Chucky. So everyone has left. Andy's the last one out the door, and it's almost a freeze, like that blurry freeze frame kind of thing. But Andy's turning around and he's looking at Chucky. Nothing happens, and it's not like in Christine where you get a little piece of metal move or something. But you're left with the sense that this story might not be done.
Yeah.
Right.
But they don't tip their hand that it is.
No.
Whereas like the end of Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, doesn't Freddy like burst through this thing and grab? Like that one's very overt.
And I like, there's I don't like that particularly. I mean, I think been clear many times that I don't like when franchises or like when original movies, they've already planned the franchise and they leave a huge opening at the end, and you're like, okay, I know there's going to be a second one, a third one, a fourth one. I would much rather that they just had a solid film, and if there was a reason or a potential to go back, okay, make a second film, but don't like leave it hanging at the end so everybody knows that it's going to be a second film, a fifth film, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, now it's easy to say in hindsight, but these kind of horror icon characters, like I think that's almost the place where you do want to have franchises.
Sure.
Whereas there's sometimes standalone horror films that don't really lend themselves to a franchise, but they do well, so they feel the need to keep making them. So like arguably something like The Conjuring doesn't scream like we need lots of sequels, but I think they did it for commercial reasons. But I think when you have a character like a Freddy Krueger or a Chucky, like it makes sense to maybe franchise those ones.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Or would you just never want a sequel?
No, I wouldn't say never, because sometimes like I'm thinking of, I think Halloween 2 was a good follow-up to the original. Aliens, great follow-up to the original, and some people even think that that's better than the original. I'm not one of them, but it's a strong sequel. So
here's a good example: Terrifier. Like I think Art the Clown, he's so engaging and captivating. People like seeing the envelope being pushed.
Sure.
Like I think people are kind of anticipating, like every year we're going to get our Terrifier, and it's like I think you said you would be looking forward to another Terrifier film.
I don't know about looking forward, but I am looking forward to seeing how far he can push the envelope. So I'll say that much. But I mean, as much as enjoy is not the word, but as much as I've appreciated some of the Terrifier films, really, I mean, it's the same. It's like Halloween or Friday the 13th. It's the same thing over and over. It's just him never speaking and a whole bunch of gruesome kills. So really, has anything been added to the story? No, you're just repeating the formula, but with different tropes, different. Now, to be fair, they do go like really far down that road. But I don't know if that, if that makes it a decent sequel or not.
Yeah, I guess there's just like certain forms of entertainment that people enjoy, like the serialization. So
For sure.
whether you watch the Super Bowl every year, it's still a game of football between two teams, but it's like, oh, it's new and exciting. Or whether it's Call of Duty for the 13th time, you play your Call of Duty. You have look forward to that every fall. I get to play Call of Duty, or in this case, it's like, okay, like I get to see Art the Clown and how's he going to massacre people. Like it's not. It's more about the character than the plot, maybe.
Sure, but I mean, so I mentioned aliens, like. So yes, you have the xenomorph, and you have Sigourney Weaver's character, Ripley, but there's a whole bunch. There's a whole layer of new things, different things that extend the story beyond the original, rather than just repeating it. It's not just them on a spaceship. Now you've got this sleazy corporate guy. And you've got the soldiers, and you've got the young girls. What's her Newt? I think is the girl's name. So I just found that I do enjoy those kinds of sequels where you are adding layers to the original story as opposed to just regurgitating what made it good on the first one.
Yeah, and I guess the new Scream films have done some kind of different with like the requel, and they've got new things to make fun of. But I think we both said that the Scream 7, 6 was like one of the best Scream movies we'd seen.
Yes. Well, and we mentioned that with our Final Destination quick cut, right? Like, I mean, I don't know how many movies deep into that franchise, 6, 7, 8, maybe. Mm-hmm. And that was as good, I think better than the original.
Yeah.
So there is potential for those films if you have the right writer and they've got the right concept. I think follow-up films can be as good or better, but it's less common than the ones that aren't.
Sure. Yeah. So anyways, we've veered off in a few other directions here.
Sorry about that.
No, I mean, it's kind of interesting though. Like talking about when you're studying a decade, it's kind of interesting to see what is the DNA that we find in common in those ones. And then when you're dealing with franchises too, it's just.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot to talk about in some ways because the movie is fairly straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, really, right from except for the opening scene, it's just Chucky either being chased by someone or doing things, on the sly. So, and we've talked about some of the, Maggie's kill at the beginning. Oh, the scenes that we haven't talked about when, Andy takes Chucky on a little tour of the city.
Yeah.
And he goes after his partner.
Yeah.
And that was ridiculous.
I thought, he's like off in like some part of the city. How old's this kid? Like 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, I scoffed at that as well. I was like, oh, there's no way. Like, we barely let our kid walk down the street.
Totally.
Like, I don't know how this kid's like taking the subway off to like the worst parts of town and knows where to go. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and he's.
Or I guess Chucky's telling him where to go or something.
I would assume so. Yeah, he's getting directions from Chucky.
Even if my doll was telling me these things, I don't know.
You still might
As
not
a 7-year-old, you might feel a little bit.
And so you've got this 7-year-old, and he's like in homeless camps with like oil barrel fires and all this different stuff. This dilapidated, like condemned house, and now Andy doesn't go in the house. Chucky does, and then that whatever ensues in the house is just.
Yeah, if you're the type
silly.
of movie watcher who nitpicks these kind of like whether this is realistic or not, this film might bother you because I think it does that a lot.
It does, and you have to let that go. If you want to enjoy this film and many others, you just have to let those logical inconsistencies go because, again, like literature, film is asking us to suspend our disbelief. Now, sometimes that's easier than others. In this case, there are lots of those niggly bits. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. If that's something that irks you, this will drive you nuts. I think this film.
Yep. So you remember the original? So you're saying you liked the remake better? Or the remake?
I like the remake better.
You have to go back and watch it to say for sure, but I may as well.
I mean, I don't know if that's fair because we're talking about, what is it, like 40 years later, 88, 2019?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot changes, right? I mean, the look of the film is different. They've done all of these films, so they have an idea of it's not like the first time you do a Chucky film. They've gone through 7 films, and now you've got an 8th one that's a remake. They understand the lore. They understand Chucky. Even though they're going back kind of like to the beginning, there's still an edge, I feel, in the in the remake that's not there in the original. And I mean, I love Brad Dourif. I think Mark Hamill does a really
Mark
good
Hamill
job.
is a very good voice actor as well. Yeah.
So that would have been a challenge to find someone who was as good a voice as Brad Dourif, but they did it.
And Nicolas Cage would have been good.
Probably, yeah. I'd really like to see that Chucky film with Nicolas Cage.
Actually, I don't know if Nicolas Cage done any voice acting yet.
I don't know. I'm not familiar.
I'm trying to think of a film where he would just do the voice of something, but I'm sure. I'll have to look that up.
I think there's a concept for a Chucky film where you have him like in a cage going, "Not the bees," and you could have Nicolas Cage.
It's probably going to happen now that we've said that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Get on it, Cage. Make it one of your 18 movies this year. Okay. Anything else you want to say about this one?
I don't think so. I think...
Sorry about our digression, but it was related tangentially, so we're okay.
Yeah. Nope, I think that's it. But I'd be curious to go watch the second and third one, I think.
Yeah, I do. It's on my list to go back. I mean, there's so many on my list right now, but I do want to go back and watch those ones, and they're not going anywhere. So
yeah. And of course, we'll see if this makes your top 10
indubitably
80s horror films next episode.
Yeah, so that's our last, just to follow up with that, that's our last episode for this season. Then we're going to take a little bit of a break, kind of catch our breath and plan for the next season. So I think 21st is when that last episode comes out, and we won't be back till mid third week of July. So you've got a bit of a break, we've got a bit of a break, and then we're going to prepare some 2025 goodness for you.
Indeed.
All right, there you go.
I think that's it. And
that's it. We'll see you in the aisles.